I'm kind of pushing pretty hard for that job. you know, and yeah, I mean, I've seen you guys grade, be at the livestock markets grading and you're sitting there grading and the owner's like, no, that's a large, that's not a medium. That's heavy muscle. That's not light muscled. And yeah, that's a L1. That's not an M3 or a M1, you know, and you still think I ought to just throw my application in and just see just to apply for it or I don't want, I like Glenny. I'd hate to not, I mean, I hope he gets it. I mean, I know that sounds crazy when I'm telling you I'm going to apply for it, but he deserves it. And he does a good job. Well, I just turned 50, so I don't know. Glenny's probably, Glenny's my age, but they need to put him on full time and he needs to go back and buy all those years back so he can retire. Is what he needs to do. So, all right. All right. Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. All right. Bye. All right. Same here. Hey, Jasmine, you there?
Yes. Good morning. How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm good.
Give me just a second. I was calling about a job. Sorry about that. I didn't know what time got away from me. Um, you doing all right uh, with your project?
Yes.
All right. Can you talk a little bit more? It's just showing that recording. It's not coming up to your face.
Yeah,
Uh,
I still have to submit it. I was
there you
gonna
go.
submit it today.
All right. Now we, what do you think of that? Don't give me any answers or anything like that. Just tell me your opinion of that exam that you just took Monday. Pretty fair? Was it
Yes.
hard?
I didn't think it was too hard.
Well, I think I covered everything everything I told you. I think I covered. I feel I covered everything on there, and I didn't throw anything at you to try to trick you up. I wanted to be straightforward and that you knew that. Or stuff that we covered and present it in a straightforward way without it being tricky. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So did you think it was tricky in any way or anything like that?
No.
Do you think you got along? I haven't seen your exam, but do you think you got along all right with that uh, with the ration balancing problem?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I figured you probably did. I think you know how to do that. Okay, so we've talked about nutrition and we've talked about forage management. And so, this class I kind of centered around to try to teach you how to put that to come up with an overall plan and to look at the big picture of things. Uh, so on this project, I've you've turned in one ration balancing deal um, for me um, for that ration balancing homework. So I'm going to get you to do some work for me, okay? Um, and this will all go toward your project, so you can put it all together for your project. Now, for your farm, and I know you don't have a farm, do you? Do y'all have a
No.
farm or not?
No.
No? Okay. So you can make up a farm, okay? Say, I'm going to have X number of acres and you're doing cow calf pairs. And you can, you know, let me put it over on document camera. And you can just say, okay, I'm going to, could I ask you for maps of your farm? So for those of you that have farms, draw me a map, or you can get the map from, the plat of your farms from the Soil and Water Conservation Service, or you can go to USDA, the Natural NRCS, Natural Resource Service, USDA, the NRS website, and they have a soil site application deal. You can click on it, and you can find your farm, and you can draw it out, and you can print it off for a map of your farm and what it looks like, where all the water is, and where your fields are, and everything. But in your situation, Jasmine, where you don't have a farm, for your map, you can just draw a farm, big old square of X number of acres, or rectangle, or however you want that farm shaped. In reality, most farms, it's not going to be a square. It's going to be, you know, it may look like that or something. I mean, it's just how things have been divided up over the years. But for your place, you can just draw a big old square, and you can say, this is where my house is, and my barns, and working pens, and these are my pasture. You know, I'll have this part kind of fenced off somehow. And you can draw it up however you want. You can put in creeks or ponds, whatever you want in there. Uh, you can put your water system in. You can have it the ideal way that you want it. Okay. Uh, for the ones that already have farms, just draw out your farm and try to put in the water and you don't have to be to scale. I'm not going to be that picky, but give me an idea what your farm looks like and where the water is and stuff like that. Does that make sense? Of when I say the map of the farm, if
Yes.
you're raising hay, show me what your fields are, so on and so forth. That way you can put together your forage management plan, for your rotational grazing and your haying if you harvest hay. Uh, so if you decide to use warm season grasses, whether they're annuals or perennials in your grazing system, you can designate that as well. or what what paddocks you're going to use to stockpile fescue to extend your fall and winter grazings. Uh, for those of you that have cattle. So, you know, so get your maps together and put together a forage plan and finish up your ration balancing. Now, you get those things done, you know, you got half your project done, or almost half, right? You got your nutrition, you got your forage management, you got your maps. And, you know, then you'll need, then what you'll have left is a reproduction, your genetics. You'll need to write an intro and tell me about your farm and put together a table of contents where I can find your rations and where I find your nutrition plan. And you'll need to put together a health plan. Uh, and then your economics. So what I wanted to, before I go into nutrition, I told you we go into nutrition next, but I kind of changed that around a little bit because I want you to start to put together this plan. Uh, so the hopefully, you know, if you haven't done it, you will do it and you'll get it to me. You've got your nutrition. Now, when you think about by knowing how much you're going to feed, grain wise and hay wise, you know, you can, you know, you got that set for an individual cow. So how many cows are you going to be having? So like that first 3 months after calving and you're feeding your cow X number of pounds of that, of the co-op, I think you're feeding that three-way mix, right?
Yes. And the
Uh,
screen is black.
the what?
The screen is black.
Of course it
I
did.
can't see anything.
Of course it did, because I pressed the wrong button. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. Uh, so, you know, you can start a little bit with your economic plan. All right. And there's a number of ways you can do this. And I don't care how you do it. I just want you to start understanding the costs and of what it's going to cost you and putting together a business plan, somewhat of a business plan. Okay. So so for an example, do you have any numbers for me off the top of your head? I can't. Say like that ration we balanced for you, or we did yours as an example, 0 to 3 months after calving. Do you remember how many pounds of that three-way mix we were feeding?
Um,
And how many pounds of hay?
eight 8.3 pounds of the three-way mix and 23.11 pounds of hay.
All right. So that's what that came out to be. Uh, so to calculate your feed costs, you know, how many cows are you going to have? You can take that 8.3 pounds of the three-way and multiply that by your number of cows. And that's going to be the number of pounds you need for this first 3 months, right? And you can do the same thing for the hay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, so you figure out how many pounds you need of the three-way mix for those first 3 months after calving. You figure out the number of pounds of hay you need. And you do that for each of those stages of production. So you know, some of those stages of production, they're going to be grazing and you're not going to be feeding them as much, or you're not going to be feeding them. There's going to be grass and getting free choice mineral, correct?
Yes.
All right. So what you'll end up doing, or what you can do to figure out your feed cost, is after you get your rations balanced and it's on an as-fed basis, you figure up how many pounds that you're going to be feeding that cow of the three-way mix and how many pounds of hay you're going to be feeding that cow, you know, and then you're going to multiply those numbers by the number of cows that you have. That makes sense?
Yes.
And that'll tell you how many pounds of feed that you'll be feeding and how many pounds of hay you'll be feeding. Then you can call up Southern States or the local co-op, wherever you buy your three-way mix, and you can ask them how much that costs a ton. A ton's 2,000 pounds, right? They sell it by the ton. So you can just ask and just get a price on it. And it's that simple of finding how much it's going to cost you for your feed. And then you can look and see how much hay's costing, and you can put a value to your hay. And that's how you figure up your feed costs. Fairly simple, right?
Yes.
All right. So you'll do the same thing with your mineral. You know, I can't remember, typically you just throw out the mineral free choice. Sometimes they're going to eat more, sometimes they're going to eat less. So, you're going to price, you definitely want, for your cattle people, you want a high mag mineral in the spring, and then in the drought condition. Remember we talked about grass tetany and the lack of magnesium in that lush growing grass. So we definitely want to give our cattle the high mag mineral in the spring, our brood cows, the high mag mineral in the spring when that grass is growing. Once we get past that growth stage in May and June, we can go back to a regular mineral. Salt, calcium, that pre-mix mineral. And then if it gets dry, it starts raining, we want to go back to the high mag. But, you can, I don't know, I don't think they'll eat a pound a day. It's probably going to be about maybe a half a pound a day they may eat on average. I can look, I need to look that up for you and tell you how to figure that. But you can call and price the high mag mineral and price just the regular trace mineral salt and get your pricing for the mineral. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's how you're going to figure up your feed costs. So you got some work to do on your own. And this is for everybody. And then for your vaccines, let's talk a little bit about vaccinations with cattle. Vaccinations are important. We don't want them to get sick. So if we go over here to Blackboard in our folders, we can go to Health and Vaccinations folder. And you see I have beef cattle, dairy cows, equine, sheep, and stocker cattle.
I can't see the computer screen.
That's because I have the wrong button. Thank you very much. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, and that is all under the health and vaccination folder. So, uh, since you're here, I'll pick on you and we'll pull up the beef cattle vaccinations. And this is from Virginia Tech's website. Okay. So they'll give you a vaccination schedule and tell you what you should be doing. Uh, so, you know, the reason we give vaccinate, what with their herd health program, we want a healthy herd. When their cattle get sick, it costs us. It costs us with veterinarian care. If we have to get a vet out there, it's going to cost us for antibiotics to buy to give them. It's going to cost us in time as we have to get those cattle up and treat them. So it's expensive. And then what research has also shown is when calves get sick and we treat them, and although they get better, they don't gain, they don't do as well as the calves that don't get sick. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So they don't do as well as their contemporaries. So with our herd health program, the thing we want to do, the number one thing we want to do is we want to prevent exposure to disease. So the best way to prevent exposure to disease is don't bring disease in, right? So when we buy cattle, say like in your situation, you buy a bull and you bring it on the farm, you don't want to turn it out with your rest of your cows or turn him in with your other bulls. You want to hold him separate for about a month to 6 weeks to make sure he's not sick before you put him with your other cattle. So when you buy your bulls or your replacement heifers, you're going to put them in an isolation area for about 4 to 6 weeks to make sure they don't get sick. Because if you turn them in, and they're carrying something, they pick something up. They may not be sick at the time, but most of our diseases we worry about with cattle, you're looking at a 21 to 28 day incubation period. So they may be fine for a couple weeks. That third week, they start getting a little droopy, maybe going off feed or starting to run a fever. So that's why we need to keep them separate for a minimum of 4 weeks, preferably about 6, just to make sure everything's cool. So the other thing we think about, or we need to think about, is for you horse people, is going to horse shows or going out on a trail ride with other people, and you take your horses exposed to these other horses, and then you bring them home. Again, you need to keep them separated because they can bring in diseases. A few years back, at a big cutting horse competition out in Utah, I think it was Utah, uh, there was a disease. It was a herpes. No, wasn't herpes. It was a respiratory disease, equine viral. I don't remember the name of it. It might have been the flu or something. One of the strains of flu. One of the horses there that was competing, it's very, very contagious. It's an airborne disease. And this horse had it. And of course, there were hundreds, if not, there were several hundred horses there at that show. And those horses were exposed to it because of the barn situation and, of them being in the barns, even though they may not have been stalled next to each other. It is an airborne disease. So all those horses were exposed to it, and then they those horses, when they went home, exposed the horses there at their home ranch. Um, so there was a major outbreak of that disease, and they canceled competitions for a while because it was so widespread. Um, so, we got to think about taking animals off the farm and then bringing them back onto the farm. Again, we need to keep them isolated. Um, Another good deal to do is to, when you go to somebody else's farm and you come back home, change your clothes or disinfect your boots or have a pair of coveralls or something you can put on the other farm, because you can pick stuff up and bring it home. So you want to do things like that uh, to prevent bringing diseases onto your farm, limiting the amount of people coming on your farm. Because if Farmer Joe comes down the road and, he's been out in his cattle and comes by to look at yours and to shoot the bull with you a little bit, uh, he could bring in something to your cows. So you want to minimize exposure or, to disease either through people, through lives, through other animals, even through trucks. Feed trucks can bring stuff in. So, you want to try to ideally have an area where your feed is delivered and they're not exposed not exposing all your animals to. Um, so we want to do everything we can to prevent disease, exposure to disease. And so that's a big part of a herd health program. Another part of a herd health program is keeping the disease resistance high. Nutrition is a major part of that. We feed our animals properly. They're going to have the proper nutrients they need for their immune systems. Um, so nutrition is very important. Even though we may be in good health and we get exposed to disease, we could still get sick, right? So that's another key factor with keeping disease resistance high are vaccinations. Just like we take the flu vaccine every year to help prevent us from getting the flu. We may be healthy, but somebody has a flu and we pick up that virus, we could get sick from it. So, keeping resistance high is very important. Nutrition and vaccines are answers for that. And another part of a herd health program uh, is isolation. If disease gets in there into our herd, we want to keep it from spreading. Okay, so we want to prevent it spread. So we have an isolation area. We can put new animals in or sick animals in, uh, and keep it from spreading. And then the fourth part, there's actually five parts. You have prevent exposure, traffic control of keeping people off your farm would be another one, keeping resistance high, uh, isolation for new animals and for sick animals, and then the fifth one is sanitation. The biggest thing, the two big areas that we run into with cattle with sanitation are a lot of diseases are spread from that fecal to mouth contact. So if we can prevent cattle from going into creeks and ponds to water, I mean, and I'm just speaking from a health standpoint. I'm not speaking from environmental. Environmentally, it's good to keep everything out of out of water, the creeks and the ponds, for water cleanliness. But I'm looking at it from a health standpoint right here with, you know, we've all seen cattle standing in ponds or standing in creeks and they urinate and they defecate in the creeks and ponds. And then they sit there and they turn around and drink out water. So having water troughs and keeping them clean will help prevent that fecal to mouth contact. Keeping your feed troughs cleaned out because, you know, cows, if they got to poop, they're just going to poop. They don't care where it is, right? You know, and they'll poop in the feed trough. Horses are the same way. I'll go down there in the barn and they've pooped in their water buckets. I have to scrub out their water buckets, or their feed, or their little feeder I put their grain in. They'll have fecal material in it. They just poop where they need to poop. Wherever they are, they need to poop. They just poop or pee. So, you know, it's important to stop that fecal to mouth contact. And then the other place that farmers do a lot, the other thing they do that we've got to be careful of and pay attention of is, you know, a lot of tractors now have loaders on them, right? The front end loader. And we use that to scoop up feed. We also use it to haul, you know, push it, you know, roll a dead animal in there and move it to go bury it, or scrape our pens, and we have mud and manure and stuff in there. And, you know, it's a very handy implement, but it can be a way for us to spread disease if we're not careful. So if we are moving, you know, material, you know, using it to scrape a pen or hauling manure with it or something, you know, wash that bucket out before you go load up your feed. Clean it up, disinfect it. You want to stop that fecal to mouth contact. So sanitation's important. So those are your five deals of preventing disease. So what I really want to talk about here is to on this keeping resistance high. I want to talk about vaccinations. Now, this extension publication has a little calendar for you for a herd health program. You know, when we're handling cattle, it's something that we don't do all the time. We typically handle our cows and run them through the chute a couple times a year. And, you know, so given that, you know, because it's a big deal, you know, unless you're AI and your cows, you know, you don't run them through the chute that often because you got to, you know, it's an ordeal. You got to get them all in and run them through the chute, and it can turn into a job. So, you know, there's several reasons why we want a defined calving season. One is for management. You know, we can feed all of our cows are going to be in the same stage of production. If we can combine our calving season to a 60-day period, that's great. Most people do a 90-day, a 3-month deal. You know, that's kind of long, I think. Ideally, it's going to be 60 days or less. And the tighter calving frame that you have, the tougher it's going to be. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard to get cows bred in that you know, to have a 30-day calving season or a 45-day calving season. So, you know, 60 days is a really good goal to shoot for, to have them all bred and calving within 60 days. And ideally, you want the majority of them coming in that first 30 days. When you sell your cattle, you know, your calves are going to be close within a 2-month range. So, you know, it's it's better for management to have that defined calving period, especially when we, nutrition wise, weaning, it concentrates your labor during that time. Um, and, or you can plan to devote your labor for calving during that time. And you can also, it makes things easier for vaccinations. Um, so when we think about our herd health for adults prior to breeding, pre-breeding vaccines, you know, typically, we calve our cows out, and about, at the end of calving season, we tend to get our cows in and our calves in, and we work those calves. We'll castrate them, we'll implant them, and we already have everything gathered up, and it's, you know, a month before breeding season. So we go ahead and give them our pre-breeding vaccines. And so our cows, we need to look at reproductive vaccines, because if they get one of these reproductive diseases, it will cause abortion. And if they abort their calf, then we don't have a calf to sell. So we need to think about breeding, uh, vaccinating their cows for repro diseases. And these diseases are leptospirosis, Vibrio. We can use a IBR, BVD, PI3, BRSV vaccines. These vaccines, they're most of these are IBR, PI3, BRSV. Those are respiratory diseases. BVD is a diarrhea disease, bovine viral diarrhea. Um, when you vaccinate your cows with those, and we do that for, we want, keep that resistance up for those diseases in the cows. Uh, our cows need to be open when we do that. They can cause abortions. Uh, Now, certain brands of vaccines, if you stick with a certain brand, it's okay, but you need to read the label. Um, but um, anyway, these are the vaccines that you need to give your cows prior to breeding. Uh, and then typically we go ahead and do some parasite control, um, and fly control. And what we did a lot of times on these ranches, we used ear tags, fly tags, in their ears to help for summer fly control. Go ahead and check the identification. Make sure they got, you got your numbered ear tags in them. Uh, Check their eyes, teeth, feet, legs, udders. Make sure everything's cool. Just look over them good. Um, Bulls prior to breeding. Um, it's important for these bulls. You give them the same vaccines that you're using with your cows: Vibrio, Lepto, uh, IBR, BVD, PI3, BRSV. You want to give them those vaccines as well. It has this one has trichomoniasis here. That is a venereal disease. I don't know how much we see that in Virginia. We had a problem with that. We had to be real careful of that out in Colorado on that ranch I worked at, because we, we grazed a lot of BLM land, government land, Bureau of Land Management, not the Black Lives Matter group. Um, they own a lot of the land out west, and the forest permits, state forest and national forest, I guess mainly state forest, we would get permits to graze on the forests, and other ranches would do the same thing. So you may have a big section of land or a big area of land of several thousand acres, and you may be grazing your cattle on there, and another rancher is grazing his cattle on there as well. And so those cattle intermingle, and um, and this that's where that trichomoniasis can come into play. Um, so I don't think we have an issue of it in Virginia. Um, the other time, you know, um, with your cows is at weaning time. Um, we get we bring those calves in. Typically, we'll give them a set of pre-weaning vaccines, and then we'll give the booster when we wean them. And then when we pull those cows off, or those calves off those cows, we've got everything up. It's a good time to go ahead and preg check your cows to make sure they're all bred. The ones that are not bred, it's probably, it changes from year to year, but traditionally the recommendation is to sell those open cows. And the reason being is if that cow's not pregnant, she's not going to give you a calf this year. So you have fed her all winter. You're going to feed her all winter, and she's not going to produce anything for you. And then, it's going to be 2 years before you get, then she's going to get bred. So it's going to be 2 years before you got to feed that cow, and you're only going to get a calf from it. So the recommendation is when you preg check your cows, if they're not bred, is to sell them, because they're just going to cost you money, and they're not going to bring in any income. And sometimes when you have that open cow, there may be something going on as to why she didn't get bred. So, if you keep her and you feed her all winter and you breed her back, she may not conceive the following year. She's got issues. So just go ahead and sell your open cows. Get rid of them. And, you're going to have a certain percentage every year that's not bred. So just plan on getting rid of those open cows. For your calves, now, everybody does this different in real life. This is Virginia Tech's recommendation. But it doesn't, it may or may not be practical for you. Okay. What is recommended when your cows calve, or what most people do, is you identify that calf and you disinfect the navel. And we used iodine solution, a pretty stout iodine. I can't remember the percentage of iodine it contained, but they can get a disease called navel eel with that umbilical cord, that fresh umbilical cord. It can get infected. So when that calf's born, ideally, and this is what we always done everywhere I worked, we would tag that calf, if we were there when it was born or when we found it, and we would identify it and identify which mother it goes to. And then we disinfected the navel, and we weighed them, to know what that calf weighed. Um, so you definitely need to identify them, and you need to disinfect the navel. Now, um, depending on where you live, what you do, and stuff, uh, you can give them a vitamin A and D injection. Tech recommends it. I've never worked at a place we did that. The only time we ever gave them an A and D injection was at Virginia Tech. So you may need that, you may not. It depends. Okay. Vitamin D, we know is the sunshine vitamin. Vitamin A, uh, it's very important. It's a fat soluble vitamin. Um, you may need that. You may not. I don't know. Uh, as I said, I've never worked at a place where we gave those newborn calves a vitamin A and D injection other than at Virginia Tech. Um, Now, vitamin E and selenium, that depends on where you live. Uh, Now, some places I've worked, we gave them this injection. We would give the vitamin E and selenium injection to newborn calves and newborn lambs because we were in a vitamin, we were in a selenium deficient area, and so it was needed. So that's one of those deals you need to check with your local vet to see, when in doubt, check with your local resources. Check with your vet. Do I need to give this vaccination to my newborn calves? Um, because they know what's out there, okay? Or call your local extension agent. Uh, it's not going to hurt anything uh, to give them this. It's just, uh, prevention. An ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. So, if you have that extra money, definitely go that A and D injection, vitamin E and selenium. You need to check your area to see if you're deficient in that. The farm I worked on, now we did this in Blacksburg at Tech. The farm I worked on outside of Blacksburg, we did this as well. We didn't do it at Stewart's, and we didn't do it in Colorado or Nebraska or in North Carolina on those farms. So it's that the vitamin E is going to be region specific. Um, Now, Tech has here to give them a 7-way clostridial vaccine. What they're saying now, this was put out a few years ago. When was this put out? Uh, I don't know when. It's put out a few years ago. Typically, these clostridial diseases, that newborn calf has, ideally, or that young calf has got that immunity from the cow through the colostrum, especially that newborn calf. So what they're saying is if you get your calves up, when they're about 3 months of age, and you work those calves, go ahead and that's when you need to give that Clostridium vaccines. But if you don't do that, go ahead and give them this vaccination. But realize it's not going to do a lot of good. But you can do it. It'll help. But ideally, do it when they're about 3 months of age, when those Clostridium, when those antibodies from that colostrum of that cow are starting to decline. So typically we would do that when we worked their calves because they were 2 to 3 months of age at that time. Now, remember, these are recommendations. It doesn't fit in all management schemes. Um, and it does tell you that the vaccinating for the clostridial disease right after birth doesn't lead to sufficient immunity because of the mother's antibodies in that colostrum. Um, but if they're not going to get another dose of it until weaning, just do it. Um, now, um, the other thing that we do, that's recommended with calves, and if you're not going to be selling your calves on the niche type deal, you need to implant them with growth implants. Uh, Growth implants, they go in the ear, and at slaughter time that ear's cut off, so you know it's not affected. Um, and but you need to think about implanting. Uh, Implants you get about a 10% increase in weight gain from one implant, and implants aren't expensive. So, if you can increase your weight, those implants more than pay for themselves. Uh, so implant your steer calves. If you're raising bulls, do not implant bull calves. You can make them go sterile. Uh, Heifer calves, if you're not going to be using them as replacements, in your case, you're just selling everything, Jasmine. You're not raising replacements. You're buying your replacements. Go ahead and I would implant all my calves. Uh, Now, if I was raising replacements, I would do, you can buy Cinevex as a brand of implant, and they make one for steers and make one for heifers. And according to their label, it does not hurt reproduction. But you only want to do one implant. So if you're using the Cinevex H, you can implant them at birth, but don't implant them again after that if you're keeping your own replacements. But in your case, implant them. Uh, Castrate all your bull calves. Check and see if they got horns. If they have horns, dehorn them. Um, so that's pretty much what we do uh, with those calves. Uh, Now, this is say in a mid nursing period from 2 to 6 months of age. Most times, and I hope I'm not confusing you. When you come up on a cow and she just given birth, typically you're going to weigh it, you're going to identify it, put an ear tag in and identify that, match it up with that cow's number, write it down. Calf number one belongs to cow number whatever. Or you may even write out an ear tag with the same numbers that cow has. So that cow and that calf belong together, because you can always replace the ear tag when you give it a permanent number, when you assign it another number. Whatever works for you, you just need to identify. And we disinfect the navels. And that's pretty much all we did. Uh, Unless we had to give this vitamin and selenium injections. And as I said, we didn't do that other than at Tech and at Blacksburg, that farm with the selenium. Uh, but you need to check with your vet. Now, when we got those calves in to work them, when they're about 2 months of age, that's when we vaccinated everything. Uh, we gave them a 7-way vaccine. We gave them the respiratory vaccinations, and we usually gave them a scours vaccine uh, to boost, to help prevent scours or diarrhea. So, and then we implanted them as well. Um, so um, that's what we did with, on the ranches I worked at. Now, when when you think about parasites and calves, parasites decrease weight gain and they can cause your animals to die if they get overloaded. And we see a lot of colic issues with horses due to parasites. Parasite control, the timing is what's important on that. Um, so if you have a spring-born calves, you're going to do it about July, um, late June to mid-July. You're going to go in there and do a deworming for those calves. Uh, for fall-born calves, you're going to do it before you turn them out on grass if you have a fall calving schedule. And we dehorned them there, at about 2 months of age when we got them in and worked them. But we didn't deworm them, when at 2 months of age when we worked these cows. We did it. We got them up in the summer and dewormed them. Uh, Now, pre-weaning vaccines, typically what we did with our cows, we calved them, identified those calves, disinfected the navels. And then after all the cows are calved and before breeding season, we got everything in. We gave the pre-breeding vaccines, and then we 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 castrated the calves. We dehorned them if they had horns, and we gave them the vaccines uh, at around 2 months of age. Then we got them in the summertime and run them down through the chute and gave them dewormer. Uh, and if it had been, depending on which implant we used, some implants last 90 days, some last 60 days. Uh, we would re-implant those calves if it had been 60 to 90 days. At least re-implant our steer calves. And then, when we got them in and dewormed them, because, if it had been enough time there for that implant to be done. Then we would get them in again in August or September, I guess September, 1st of September, we started getting our calves in for pre-weaning vaccinations. We do this, we get them in and we gave them a dose of Clostridium again, respiratory diseases, and then we kicked them back out. And then a month later, we got them all in again, and we gave them boosters for all these vaccinations. And if we kept replacement heifers, that's when we made it, we decided that which heifers we wanted to keep for replacements. We vaccinated them you have to have a vet vaccinate them. But we did for brucellosis. They have to be vaccinated for brucellosis, I think, before 9 months of age. Brucellosis is a reproductive disease. It's just a one-time vaccination. It has to be done by a veterinarian. That disease causes abortions in cows, and so you need to make sure do your replacement heifers with the brucellosis vaccines. And that disease is zoonotic. People can get it from cattle. So, do it to protect yourself as well as to prevent abortions in your cows. We also did parasite control there at weaning time. And anything we missed with dehorning or castrations, we took care of it. And again, we looked at our days for the implants. And then what we did with those calves, we got them, we separated them. We put them in lots, little paddocks, and we fed them, and we got them up to about seven. You know, they weaned off about six, average weight about 500 to 600 pounds, somewhere in that vicinity. And we put a couple of 100 pounds on them, got them eating from feed bunks, drinking from water troughs, and then we sold them. Um, so those were the vaccines you got to worry about, uh, for your herd health program. And now, what's going on with marketing? We have Virginia. They've nationwide. They've started this beef quality assurance program, BQA, um, and Virginia is part of that. And so, if you vaccinate, and it's basically these vaccinations. So on your calves, you wean, pre-weaning time, you vaccinate them. At weaning time, you come back and you do it again. Uh, and you get them weaned. You wean them for, I think it's 60 days, 45 to 60 days, uh, to make sure they're not bawling for mama anymore, and you get them bunk broke and drinking, you know, getting them broke to drink, eat out of feed troughs and drink out of water troughs. You're eligible then to get to sell. You can get the county extension agent to come by and you show them your vaccination records, and they'll they'll give you, or they'll sell you, a tag that says BQA certified, and you can sell those cattle on BQA certified sales, and those cattle bring a higher price because those buyers know that they've been vaccinated, they've been weaned, and they should be healthy. And depending, so that gives you it gives you an outlet to go sell your calves to get a premium price for them. Especially if you use the genetics, when we start talking about genetics, I'll talk about it a little bit more. But this BQA program, there's two routes. There's the yellow tagged ones, which you don't know what the genetics are, or you can go the purple tagged ones, and that's where you know what the genetics are. And BQA has a set of guidelines to use for EPDs. If your bulls have certain growth traits and carcass traits, then you can get that purple tag. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the premium price for these calves are going to be the BQA purple tag calves, because those buyers know the genetics and they know they've been vaccinated. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did I get you confused? Bringing in
No.
real life their recommendations.
No,
The
I
thing,
understand it.
okay, the thing you got to realize is, everybody has different management schemes. So veterinarians, research universities like Virginia Tech, they'll make recommendations and, of what you should do. And, you know, hopefully your management will work with those recommendations. Uh, just like their little caveat about giving newborn calves a clostridial disease vaccine. You know, if a lot of people, and I hate to say this, those calves are born and they don't touch that calf until they pull it off mama. So They're saying if you don't do, if that's what you do when that calf's a baby, go ahead and shoot it up with clostridial disease. It's better than nothing. But ideally, you need to calve in a defined calving period, and then get your calves in and work them. A lot of people still, they calve year round. I can name a lot of people. They just leave those bulls with those cows, and they got calves coming every month of the year. And when they need money, they load up that calf and they take it to the livestock market and sell it. And I'm just going to tell you my opinion of livestock markets now. You're shooting yourself in the foot if that's how you're just going to plan on marketing your calves. Those cattle are a commodity. And when you go sell just at the local livestock market, those buyers that are buying the calves, they have no clue what you've given them. They have no clue about the genetics. They don't know anything about those calves. They just see a calf there. They see how much it weighs, and they're not going to pay any more than they have to pay, because when they get it home, it could be sick. It could be yucky genetics and they don't grow. They're not going to pay any more than they have to. So as a producer, I think you're shooting yourself in the foot by selling your cattle at the weekly livestock market. That's just me personally. I think you really need to look at marketing your calves. You know, you need to try to get the most you can from them. And this BQA, this Beef Quality Assurance Program, you need to become certified in it. And you need to market your calves through that program. Now, you know, cattle buyers, they like to buy a whole truckload of cattle. Ideally, they like to roll onto your farm, Jasmine, and buy all your calves right off the farm and don't even let them go through a livestock market. That would be ideal. It doesn't happen in Virginia very much because the average cow herd in Virginia is less than 30 cows. You know, you have a job, you have some land, you throw your cows out there, you have a few cows for extra income, and 30 calves does not constitute a truckload of cattle. Um, they're going to need about 60. They can haul up to about 20,000 pounds. 30 calves aren't going to do it. So, um, what this BQA does is, Jasmine, say you and I were neighbors, and, we both calved in the spring, and, you have your management deal, or, you have your farm, I have my farm. But what it does is, where I don't have a truckload of steers and a truckload of heifers, you don't have a truckload of steers or a truckload of heifers. You know, I can go with the recommendation. I follow the BQA guidelines for vaccinations and genetics, and you follow those guidelines, you're BQA certified, and you follow those guidelines on vaccinations and genetics. When we go to sell our calves, we call up, we're thinking about getting our calves sold. We call up the county extension agent and say, hey, I've got 15 steers and 15 heifers that I need you to come look at. We need to put them on a sale this fall. And he'll come and look at them. He'll look at our vaccination records and the genetics, the EPDs from the bulls that we used. And he'll say, okay, you know, and he'll give us those tags, and we put those tags in the ear, and when he gets enough cattle to make truckload lots, he'll combine my calves and your calves and maybe Farmer Joe's down the road. Now we've got enough steers and we've got enough heifers, and so we've got a few truckloads of cows. He'll call a state grader, and the state grader comes by and he looks at their calves and he grades them according to size and muscling, and guesses the weight, or we can run them through the scales and weigh them. But they'll put together truckloads of cattle from various producers, and they'll put them on a tail auction, and the buyers buy them. And so all of my 7 weight steers combined with your 7 weight steers and 4 or 5 other producers will go on a truckload. My 5 weights, your 5 weights, the other people's 5 weights will go on trucks. And same thing. You know what I'm saying? They'll put together truckloads, and the buyers know they've all been vaccinated and they have certain genetics, and so we get a premium price. So that's how we want to look at marketing our cattle. So this is a pretty good deal with health. This this extension publication, so I recommend you to read it and use this as a basis for setting up your herd health section of your project. Does that help you with that?
Yes.
Okay. So now you've got your grazing, you got your forage management, you got your nutrition, you know how to figure up your costs for your feed and your mineral. You know what vaccines you're going to give. Call when you're on the phone with Southern States getting prices for feed and mineral. Ask them what the prices are for these vaccines. Multiply that, figure out how many cows you need, and there's your cost for your vaccinations. That makes sense?
Yes.
So is this economic deal coming together for you now? Doesn't look so overwhelming, does it?
No, it's not too bad.
All right. Uh, so, you have any questions for me?
I can't think of any.
All right. Let me show you one more thing before we quit. Uh, I'm going to show you how to figure out what you're going to sell your cattle for. Okay. There's a few websites you can go to. Um, if you'll Google cattle futures prices, you can, you know, pick up here. Doesn't matter really where you go to on here. I just usually go to CME. The Chicago Mercantile Exchange is what it stands for. But um, if we look in here, let me see if I can find this. See what I need. Let me see if I can figure out how to navigate this one. Uh, uh, I don't know. This is live cattle. I want to, okay, view another product. All right, so live cattle, when you see futures are projected prices for cattle, okay? So this live cattle futures quote is live cattle are cattle that's ready to be slaughtered. Fat steers. They're getting ready. They're being sold to slaughterhouses. They're predicting, February, uh, this month when this contract closes. Uh, right now, it's a fat cattle. Slaughter cattle are bringing on, about $119 a pound on the, okay. April is predicting to be 115. So they have, you can also look at, uh, let me find, okay, livestock, feeder cattle. That's what we're going to be selling. We're going to be selling around 7 to 8 weight, 9 weight calves. So what we're going to do, say if I calve in this spring, and I'm going to be looking at selling my cattle this fall at about 700 pounds. I'm going to be looking at October, November to be selling my calves. Currently, November price for 7 weight cattle is a 121.30. So what that means, that's $121.30 for every 100 weight of cattle, for every 100 pounds of that calf weighs. So basically it's $1.21, $1.21 per pound. You're paying $1.21 a pound for a calf. So that's what you're looking at selling them at, 121.30 per 100 weight. So you can go to this website and predict what you're going to sell your calf for. That makes sense?
Yes.
Now, if you scroll back up here under view another product, you can come down here to fertilize. We're not going to do that. Never mind. So you just need to, that's where you're going to figure out what your price of your calves are going to bring this fall. Okay. So, that's what we're looking at. That help you out a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. Um, so we're about out of time. You have any questions for me? We kind of we went over quite a bit.
No, I can't think of any questions.
I'm hoping this is going to become clear to you on how to do this stuff.
Yes.
Um, so anyway, have any questions, you know to call me. All right.
Okay.
All right. And that goes for the rest of you guys in this class. So I've got to grade your assignments you've sent in. Mary's sent in her forage deal. I got to get graded and look over. And I know I need to work with her. There's a couple people doing horses, and I need to balance an equation for them. I don't know whether to do it here in class or just do it on the phone with them. I'd just sooner do it on the phone if y'all will call me. But put your nutrition plan together and your forage management and now your herd health. Get that together for me and let me take a look at it. Because we're coming up on spring break here in a couple of weeks, and Uh, let's just have that due after spring break. And we may add something else to it as well by that point. But I want you to, what I found out in the past, guys, if I don't get you to turn stuff into me as we go along, I get your projects are pretty shoddy because you just try to do it all the night before and then you're like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? So March 6th through 11th, that first full week of March is spring break. So the Monday after we come back from spring break, I would like to have your nutrition, your forage management, and that includes your maps, and your herd health turned into me. And we'll probably have reproduction, be finished with reproduction, talking about genetics. So, start putting in, plan on having your reproduction section turned in with that as well, even though we haven't covered it. And then when we come back, for the rest of the semester, that'll just leave you genetics and your economics. But you should at this point, for those of you doing cattle, be figuring that out. You know how much your feed's going to cost you. You know how much feed you're going to be feeding. So you can price your feed, price your hay, price your mineral, price your vaccines, and then you know how to look up the futures for your calves. So you're going to have an idea of what you're going to get for your cattle. So, you're gumming together with that. So if you have questions, call me. Does this project seem as overwhelming now as we're getting into this and I'm telling you how to get it done and work it?
Yeah, it's a lot better than the first day I heard about it.
Yeah, you were pretty blown away, and I'm sure everybody else was too. So, anyway, I guess that's it for today then, Jasmine. You're a good
Okay,
sport.
see you tomorrow.
Tolerate me, just me and you in here. Evan took a job, so he's taking it online. So you're going to be in the hot seat the remainder of the semester. Just so you know.
Well, I made it this far. I guess I'll be
What's
all
that?
right.
Yeah.
I said I
Well,
made it
look
this
at.
far.
Yeah, that's right. You made it this far. You'll be all right. But you can also look at it as well that you're getting one-on-one instruction. You're really getting your money's worth on here, right? You don't have to share with
Yeah,
anybody else.
yeah, it's helping a lot.
So, uh, so that's good. So anyway, we will adjourn, and I will see you tomorrow in HR.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
All right. Is it raining your way?
It was a little bit, but it had stopped when I came in.
Well, we had a good rain last night, and it was still raining when I got here. I think it's supposed to rain pretty much most of the day today. I'm not for certain. I hope it does. We need it. So, it got dry last year, and we still haven't. We had some rain this fall, but we're still behind. And That's not good.
All right, I'll see you later.
All right, I'll see you.